The Ottoman Empire ruled for over 600 years, reshaping history and leaving an undeniable mark on the world. But one question continues to spark debate. Were the Ottomans actually Mongols? It's easy to see why people draw comparisons. Both the Ottomans and Mongols built vast empires, crushed rivals, and rewrote the political order of their time. But were the Ottomans a direct continuation of Mongol power, or were they something entirely different? That's exactly what we'll uncover today, separating myth from reality and tracing the real origins of the Ottoman Empire. The Mongol conquests of the 13th century changed everything. They didn't just defeat kingdoms, they obliterated them. The most devastating blow came in 1258, when Mongol armies stormed Baghdad, burning libraries, massacring scholars, and bringing an end to the Abbasid Caliphate, which had ruled the Islamic world for centuries. From Persia to Anatolia, the Mongols crushed any resistance, forcing Turkish tribes to flee westward. The entire balance of power in the region was shattered, leaving a power vacuum that new rulers sought to fill. This raises an important question. If the Mongols dominated Anatolia during this period, did they also shape the rise of the Ottomans? While the Mongols reshaped the world with their brutal conquests, the Ottomans emerged as an entirely different force. But were the two really connected? Some believe the Ottomans were simply another Mongol offshoot, but history tells a different story. The truth is, the Ottomans didn't descend from Genghis Khan's bloodline, nor did they inherit Mongol rule directly. Instead, they were the product of a chaotic Anatolia, one shaped by Mongol invasions, but not controlled by them. By the time Osman I established his small principality in the late 13th century, the Mongol Empire had already fractured. The Ilkhanate, the Mongol dynasty ruling Persia and parts of Anatolia, was still a dominant force, but it never truly absorbed the frontier regions where the Ottomans first rose. Instead, these areas became a battleground of power struggles between Mongol governors, fleeing Seljuk leaders, and independent Turkish warlords. Osman's rise didn't come from Mongol backing. It came from taking advantage of this chaos. He carved out his own state in Byzantine lands, far from Mongol-controlled regions. His warriors weren't Mongol soldiers. They were a mix of Turkish nomads, local Byzantine converts, and frontier raiders, united by opportunity rather than heritage. The idea that the Ottomans were Mongols oversimplifies history. The Mongols and Ottomans had entirely different political and military structures. The Mongols ruled through sheer terror, often wiping out entire cities to establish dominance. The Ottomans, on the other hand, were far more calculated. They didn't destroy, they absorbed. Where the Mongols relied on cavalry raids and short-term control, the Ottomans built an administrative system that could hold vast territories together for centuries. This fundamental difference shows why the Ottomans weren't a Mongol successor, but a power in their own right. The Mongols stormed across Eurasia like a tidal wave, but when their empire fractured, it left behind something unexpected, a power vacuum in Anatolia. Many assumed that the Ottomans simply stepped in as Mongol successors, but history tells a different story. The reality is that the Mongol collapse didn't create the Ottomans, it created the chaos that made them possible. By the mid-14th century, the Ilkhanate was crumbling. Its once mighty rule over Persia and Anatolia was breaking apart, leaving Mongol governors, Turkish warlords, and former Seljuk leaders fighting for dominance. This instability forced thousands of people, Turkish nomads, displaced warriors, and even Mongol defectors, to seek new allegiances. The Ottomans thrived in this environment, not because they were Mongols, but because they understood how to turn disorder into opportunity. While other Beyliks fought over the remnants of Mongol rule, the Ottomans focused on something different: expansion into Byzantine lands. Unlike the Mongols, who relied on fear and destruction, the Ottomans mastered diplomacy. They made alliances with local rulers, converted former Byzantine elites into loyal commanders, and absorbed diverse populations into their growing state. This strategic approach set them apart from the Mongols, whose empire splintered within a century. The Ottomans, however, were just getting started. The Mongols ruled with brute force, but the Ottomans mastered something even more powerful: adaptation. When the Mongol Empire shattered, it left behind more than destruction. It left ideas, systems, and people who carried Mongol influence into new realms. But did this make the Ottomans Mongols in disguise? The truth is far more complex. In the 13th and 14th centuries, the Mongols controlled vast territories, including Anatolia, where they imposed their own administrative structures. They introduced the concept of a strong central ruler with absolute authority, something the Ottomans would later refine into their sultanate system. They also normalized the practice of incorporating diverse groups into the military, an approach that found new life in the Ottoman Janissary Corps. Even legal traditions changed, as the Mongols' yasa, customary law, coexisted with Islamic law, shaping how later Ottoman rulers governed. But the Ottomans didn't just copy the Mongols. They took what worked and discarded what didn't. While the Mongols relied on raw conquest, the Ottomans built a system of governance that could sustain an empire for centuries. They replaced Mongol brutality with a more calculated mix of diplomacy, religious tolerance, and administrative efficiency. By the time Mehmed II took Constantinople, the Mongol legacy had faded, and the Ottoman identity had fully formed. The Mongols were feared for their sheer military power, but their influence ran deeper than the battlefield. When they stormed into Anatolia, they didn't just bring destruction. They left behind ideas, institutions, and people who reshaped the region. The question is, did they shape the Ottomans? Or did the Ottomans take their own path? One of the strongest Mongol legacies was their system of governance. The Ilkhanate, the Mongol state in Persia and Anatolia, ruled through a blend of Mongol traditions and Persian administration. They taxed, they recorded, they built roads, things that seemed at odds with their brutal reputation. When the Ottomans rose to power, they inherited a land already conditioned to centralized rule. They didn't need to invent everything from scratch. They refined and perfected what was already there. Militarily, the Mongols operated with relentless speed, using highly organized cavalry and psychological warfare. The Ottomans, though, evolved past Mongol shock tactics. Instead of a purely nomadic force, they built a multi-layered military structure. The elite janissaries, drawn from Christian populations through the Devshirme system, were nothing like Mongol cavalry. But the idea of using a ruling class separate from local elites? That had Mongol fingerprints all over it. Even the way the Ottomans ruled their vast empire, balancing Islamic law with imperial authority, echoed Mongol pragmatism. Yet, by the time of Bayezid I, the Ottomans were no longer just another successor state in Mongol-dominated lands. They were something new, something different. The Mongols reshaped the Islamic world, leaving behind a political and military blueprint that many later empires adapted. But when it comes to the Ottomans, did they inherit the Mongol legacy? Or did they rewrite the rules of empire building? One of the most striking similarities between the two was their approach to multi-ethnic rule. The Mongols governed vast and diverse populations across Asia, using a pragmatic approach, allowing local rulers to maintain their traditions while ensuring ultimate loyalty to the Khan. The Ottomans took this model and refined it. Their millet system, which granted religious communities autonomy, echoed Mongol policies of tolerance. Yet, unlike the Mongols, who saw themselves as outside rulers, the Ottomans fully integrated these communities into their empire. Then there's the question of succession. The Mongols operated on the principle of might makes right. Genghis Khan's empire was divided among his sons, leading to infighting. The Ottomans, in contrast, created a brutal but effective system, fratricide. Instead of splitting the empire, the strongest son would take the throne, ensuring unity. This was a major departure from Mongol traditions and a key reason why the Ottomans survived while Mongol states collapsed. Even in administration, the Ottomans took Mongol efficiency and gave it structure. The Mongols used a postal system to maintain control over their empire, but it lacked stability. The Ottomans built a bureaucracy that lasted for centuries, with an intricate system of provincial governance that outclassed anything the Mongols had. The Mongol Empire burned bright, but faded fast. The Ottomans learned from their strengths and avoided their weaknesses, forging an empire that lasted over 600 years. The Ottomans and Mongols are often compared, but one key factor set them apart: their military evolution. The Mongols built their empire through unmatched speed and mobility, striking terror with their cavalry-based warfare. The Ottomans, however, adapted their military strategies to changing times, refining Mongol tactics while introducing their own innovations that made them one of history's most formidable forces. The Mongols were masters of hit-and-run warfare. Their horse archers could cover vast distances, attacking with precision before vanishing into the horizon. Their ability to coordinate large-scale maneuvers across continents was unmatched. The Ottomans, inheriting a world shaped by Mongol dominance, recognized the importance of mobility, but took it further. They combined cavalry with disciplined infantry forces, creating a well-rounded army that could dominate both open battlefields and fortified cities. The Janissaries were a prime example of this transformation. Unlike Mongol warriors, who were born into nomadic military life, the Ottomans trained an elite force from childhood. These soldiers, taken through the Devshirme system, were rigorously trained, highly disciplined, and fiercely loyal to the Sultan. This was a direct contrast to the Mongols, whose decentralized command structure often led to fragmentation after a leader's death. Then came the introduction of gunpowder. While the Mongols relied on traditional weapons and psychological warfare, the Ottomans fully embraced the power of cannons and firearms. The Mongols had laid siege to cities with overwhelming numbers, but the Ottomans brought them down with massive artillery, as seen in the conquest of Constantinople. This shift marked the dawn of a new era, one where Ottoman firepower replaced Mongol speed as the ultimate weapon of empire. The Mongols reshaped warfare, but the Ottomans perfected it. They took what worked, discarded what didn't, and built a military machine that could withstand the test of time.